Welcome to part 2 of our Sustainable Weight Loss Solution series. In this episode, we are going to show you why fat phobia is not a healthy focus, how calorie reduction can be counterproductive to your weight loss efforts, and why we need to reduce our consumption of sugars. So, all you sugar burners out there, why do we want to get into fat burning mode? Because when in sugar burning mode, your energy is all over the place. When you're in the fat burning mode, energy and insulin levels are stable. The importance of this is that when there is too much sugar in the blood on an ongoing basis, insulin levels rise, increasing the chances for insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. In addition, the body recognizes the increased insulin, and feeling that there is enough fuel for energy decreases the release of glucagon, which is what pulls fat out of the body. The result is difficulty in losing weight. The bottom line is sugar burners store fat and fat burners burn fat, even while they are sleeping. In addition to glucagon, adiponectin is another hormone that tells your body to burn fat for fuel. Here's the problem. As your weight goes up, adiponectin goes down, and that results in your body burning less fat over time. To increase adiponectin, first of all, you need to get into fat burning state. In addition, increasing magnesium, seeds, particularly pumpkin seeds, green vegetables, dark chocolate, fish oil, avocado, lean beef, and fats such as olive, coconut, or sesame oils are very good. Also, exercise helps tremendously. Another benefit of being in the fat burning stage is that 1 gram of fat equals 9 calories and 1 gram of carbs and protein equal 4 calories. Therefore, by getting into fat burning mode, you basically eat less and have more calories for energy. Another added benefit is that eating less food equals decreased costs, which is also very nice. So what are the good fats? They are avocados, walnuts, almonds, macadamia nuts in particular, among other nuts, organic butter and olive, sesame and coconut oils. Just keep an eye on the almonds, as too many of those can really increase your omega-6s and throw the omega-3, 6, and 9 ratios out of balance. Soy and canola oil and many of the vegetable oils are very pro-inflammatory, which isn't good on your gut over time. Try to avoid them as much as possible, as well as trans fats and refined polyunsaturated fats that you find in most processed foods. Another tip to accelerate getting into fat burning mode is bone broth, which we discussed in part 1, which is really good for inflammation. Do a cleanse with bone broth for 2 days. This will actually help alkalize the body's chemistry. It helps to heal the gut and is also good for the skin. This 2-day cleanse will take getting into fat burning mode from about a 3-week process down to maybe about a 1-week process, so it'll really accelerate the timing of that. It also helps with anti-aging factors, which are really nice as you go through life. And then on to carbohydrates. Experts are saying it's time to stop being obsessed with counting calories. Carbs are not the devil. We need quality calories from carbs, just the right kind and at the right time. It's all about quantity, not quality, not quantity. There are good carbs and bad carbs. Bad carbs are things like grain products, including bread, cereals, pasta, chips, muffins, bagels, etc. You have rice, processed foods, soda pop, energy drinks, ice cream, and other sugar-laden desserts. And then liquid calories are especially a problem because you can consume huge amounts of them in a very short period of time. So examples of good carbs are fruits, vegetables, nuts, quinoa, sweet potatoes, beans, and legumes. Another good fat-burning carb is berries. They are very low on the glycemic index, which helps you to keep insulin levels low. Now, hold on for this surprising fat-burning secret. If you want to fire up your fat-burning process, eat bananas, potatoes, raw oatmeal, cold pasta, white beans, and lentils. And it's very surprising to most people because we talk about potatoes being the forbidden fruit. But and at this point you may be yelling heresy. But basically, what you're finding is that by eating them, you just need to eat them correctly at the right time. The new buzzword for these is what's called resistant starch. And foods that form resistant starch pass through the intestines without being digested, and they feed the good, healthy bacteria in the gut. Prolongs the feeling of fullness, increases fat burning, and helps boost immunity, improves sugar control, and helps to lower cancer risk over time. Research is saying that replacing just 5% of your daily carbohydrates with a source of resistant starch can improve fat burning to up to something like 30%. Bananas have gotten such bad flack because of the fact that when they ripen, they create a lot of sugar. The key is to eat them before they ripen, before they become yellow and have the dark spots on them. So at this time, before they ripen, they have a higher amounts of resistant starch in them. And as to white potatoes, you cook them and put them in the refrigerator. And then after about 24 hours, they can be consumed as is, or they can be diced up and put into your grandma's potato salad recipe, which would be very good. Then insofar as raw protein for resistant starch, not raw protein, raw oatmeal, basically what you do is that you take the oatmeal and the raw oatmeal, put it into a processor, and then you blend it to the consistency of like a course meal. You add some raisins, walnuts, a little vanilla, and a pinch of salt, and pulse until they can actually take them and you can form little balls with them, and it makes a great healthy snack. Finally, don't eat your pasta warm. Put it in the refrigerator. The lower temperature changes the chemical structure into resistant starch, so you don't want to reheat it, as that will destroy the resistant starch. Add some healthy oil, balsamic vinegar, chopped veggies, nuts, seeds, whatever suits your taste. Carbs break down into sugars needed by the body for energy and metabolic processes. So in reaction to sugars in the blood, the pancreas increases insulin to enable the sugar to get from the blood into the cells for energy. What happens is over time is that we run into a big problem with insulin due to the typical American diet with an overconsumption of processed and refined carbohydrates. When digested, they turn into sugars very quickly, and the overconsumption puts a high demand on the pancreas to try to keep up with this increased insulin release. Over time, the cells in the body, particularly in the muscles and liver, become resistant due to the overstimulation of the insulin. As muscles become resistant and they lower their intake of sugars for energy, and the liver doesn't reduce the output of glucose, what happens is the sugar levels rise, and most of it is stored as fat because it can't get into the cell, so the body has to put it someplace. With our high consumption of processed and refined grains and sugar foods, they say that about 1 out of 2 adults are now insulin resistant. And the insulin is a key factor to managing weight, according to Sarah Gottfried, medical doctor. She's the author of The Hormone Reset Diet and The Hormone Cure. The carbs that you do consume ideally should be composed of good carbs, as mentioned above, and limited grains. And why do I say limited grains? Because our genetic programming, basically as to how we process foods, comes from our ancestors some 40 or so thousand years ago. We did not become an agrarian society and start growing and eating grains until about 4,000, or actually maybe about 6,000 years ago. And that sounds like a long time, but it's very short on the evolutionary time scale. Well, this is why we're not set up very well to genetically process a lot of grains, and could be the reason why so many people have problems with gluten. If you want more information, check out Dr. Peter Osborne's book, No Grain, No Pain, or Dr. Perlmutter has a great book called Grain Brain. So some great resources if you want to explore that in a little more detail. So why are grains more of an issue recently when we have been consuming them for the last 6,000 years? Well, it's because wheat is basically 59% gluten, and there's also gluten in corn, barley, and rye. They react just as much as the wheat does. And the receptors see gluten as an enemy, leading to an immune reaction. And this is further complicated if we have leaky gut syndrome. Gluten sensitivity can also have a negative effect on both your innate and adaptive immune system, so it's harder to fight off bacteria, viruses, and cancer. And besides the gluten content, we have things over time that complicate the issue, such as genetic hybridization, genetic modification, pesticides, how they are stored, which can lead to things called mycotoxins, and the actual quantity of these things that we eat kind of overload the system with toxins and negative reactions at a cellular basis. So reflect for a minute on the things that we eat nowadays in a typical American diet that are made from wheat and corn. I mean, it's huge, almost everything. And realize that cereals didn't exist prior to the 1900s. With this increased consumption of grains and therefore gluten, we also have the added sugars that are in these products, and particularly high fructose corn syrup. Furthermore, complicating the problem, according to Dr. Osborne, is that the grains can disrupt the pituitary, hypothalamus, thyroid, parathyroid, adrenals, and lead to an imbalance in testosterone in males, leading to muscle loss, and progesterone in females. As people become more aware of the gluten issue, we see more gluten-free products out there, and what happens is they start to, instead of using the gluten grains for the flour, they're using potato starch, which can also increase sugar levels in the blood, putting more demand on insulin. So this reinforces the concept of trying to get away from grain-type products as much as possible. So ideally, what you really want to do is move towards a grain-free, not just a wheat-free diet. To revisit what we discussed in part 1, moving into fat burning mode and having more sustained energy throughout the day may take a couple of weeks for the transition. No cereals, oatmeal, toast, bagels, fruit, juices, things like that. The first couple of days will often be very challenging as the body revolts against the decreased sugar availability that it's been used to. And about the third day, your system starts to settle down and the cravings reduce. It's during this time you want to try to include healthy snacks to bridge the transition. Things like maybe celery with organic cream cheese, almond butter, or hummus. Nuts and seeds are also very good, berries, things like that. Another downside of cereals and bread products is that the gluten and other genetically modified chemicals that are found in these grains can be highly inflammatory to the system and cause leaky gut, as we discussed in part 1. If you missed it in part 1, here's a quick recap. Gluten and other irritants lead to inflammation in the wall of the small intestines, which contains what are called tight junctions. They form a sort of net that prevents inappropriate substances from getting into the blood. And when you have these irritants that damage the system, it forms holes in the net called leaky gut. This leads to larger molecules such as undigested proteins, bacteria, and other toxins to be able to leak through into the bloodstream, and then they go throughout the body and cause problems throughout other organs and other physiological processes. So for breakfast, shakes are a great option. Start the day with a high-quality protein powder, good fats such as coconut milk, avocado, some organic butter, or oils such as coconut, olive, or sesame. You can also throw in some almond butter, chia seeds, berries, and turmeric. If you want some more suggestions on shakes, JJ Virgin has a book out called the Sugar Impact Diet Cookbook. Okay, and Yuri Elkam's book, The All-Day Energy Diet. And there are also a couple books that are really excellent resources for not only just eating correctly, but also for shakes. Eggs are also a complete protein, as we said in part 1, and a good choice for breakfast. And then you want to increase your carbs as the day goes on, because as we said earlier, particularly at night, you want to eat your carbs at night because they increase insulin, and because insulin and cortisol have an inverse relationship, cuts the cortisol, which can wake you up later in the night and be hard to sleep. The when you're moving from a sugar burner to a fat burner, it can take a couple of 2 to 3 weeks to actually make the transition. And this can actually be shortened down considerably by doing that bone broth cleanse, as we discussed in part 1, for a couple of days. Once you get to the point that you've reset your system, you can start to increase the carbs more and more over time. You just don't want to drop carbs out altogether, because long-term carb reduction can wind up in suppressing thyroid function, and this can lead to increased hunger, which often results in reaching for a quick snack, which isn't often in alignment with healthy weight loss. And finally, there are conflicting opinions as to whether low carbs cause the body to turn muscle into sugar for energy. So whether there is a negative effect of cortisol on muscle due to low carbs because the insulin is lower, again, the inverse relationship, or whether you're just not exercising enough to maintain muscle mass, decreased muscle mass leads to decreased metabolism, which leads to increased weight gain over time. It is important to maintain proper muscle mass because the increased metabolic activity in muscle results in a higher burn rate of fat. In addition to the sugars that we get from the breakdown of carbohydrates, we add to this the other sugars and foods that we consume every day. It's estimated that in the 1700s that the consumption of sugar was about 7.5 pounds per year. Now we consume on the average in excess of 135 pounds per year. We have become addicted to sugar in our society. And I'm a prime example of this. I grew up in a family that was not really aware of the downside of sugar consumption. We had desserts at almost every meals. I would consume candy and soda on a regular basis. We just didn't know any better. And now, many years later, I still feel the pull of these old addictive behaviors, but I override them with awareness and conscious choices. In this discussion on sugars, I'm talking about white sugar, brown sugar, high fructose corn syrup, nectars, and artificial sweeteners. Manufacturers now hide sugars in all types of products. So why is sugar such a big problem? Some of the more detrimental effects of sugars include depression, immune system suppression, premature aging, cancers of the breast, ovaries, and prostate, rectum. They have caused insulin resistance, related diabetes, fatigue, heart disease, Crohn's and colitis, yeast infections, and dental issues. It can also lead to decreased focus, concentration, motivation, memory, and productivity. Whenever you consume fruit, be sure that it's in a whole fruit and not in juices any more than necessary. And I emphasize whole because the sugar in fruit juice, which is fructose, without the insoluble fiber to hold it in the blood longer, it results in a quick release and spiking of the sugar in the blood, and then a dropping off quickly, leading to more sugar need to pick your energy and mood up a couple hours later. Apple juice is particularly high in sugar content. Apples are great if eaten in a whole form, but apple juice can have sugar, just as much sugar as soda pop. It's one of the most concentrated fruit sugars. As to artificial sweeteners, they lead to metabolic chaos. They change the balance of microorganisms in the gut. They can cause weight gain, increase the risk of diabetes, dementia, and increase sugar cravings. They can also cause sluggishness, joint pain, fatigue, diarrhea, the feeling of having mood swings, and complicating things like fibromyalgia, etc. By the way, Diet Coke is not a healthy or good alternative to regular soda. As to weight loss, studies are showing that people actually gain more weight with the diet soda than actually lose it. Think of it this way: if you remove the word tea off of the end of the word diet, what do you get? I know. And chemical food additives are contradictory to movement in a healthy direction. Good sweeteners to use are stevia and monk fruit are our favorite choices, as they have no calories and they don't have any downside to them. But then you have raw honey, maple syrup, molasses, and organic cane sugar. And finally, we have sugar alcohols such as erythritol, sorbitol, xylitol, etc. The word nectar typically conjures up the impression of natural, but it's a no-go in using it as a sweetener. We used to think that agave nectar was a good alternative, but more and more what they're finding is not a whole lot different than high fructose corn syrup. And then while on high fructose corn syrup, it's another detrimental sweetener, and it's in everything. Fat-free and low-fat desserts, breakfast and granola bars, fruit-flavored yogurts, condiments such as ketchup, also processed cheeses, tomato sauces, salad dressings, canned fruit, sherbet, muffins, and cereal. So there you have it. Good fats, good carbs, bad carbs, and reducing sugars as much as possible. Remember to start slow, don't get overwhelmed, take it in small baby steps, thereby creating consistent successes and empowering yourself to make positive, healthy choices a habit. If you found this information helpful, please like us and share this information with friends, family, and coworkers so we can all have a positive impact on the obesity situation in this country. In the next episode, part 3 of our Sustained Weight Loss Solution series, I will be discussing how hormone imbalance and the glands involved can significantly affect your weight loss and maintenance efforts over time. And I'll give you tips and strategies as to how you can get them back under control. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you on the next episode.